You ever see something so deeply wrong that your brain just refuses to process it? I'm not talking about jump scares or urban legends, I mean something real. Something you witness that scars your mind because it doesn't just break the rules, it reveals you never understood the rules to begin with. I was part of the NOAA deep sea research crew that went dark in early 2023. You might have heard vague mentions in the news. Communications malfunction, equipment failure, that sort of thing. But I'm telling you now, that wasn't the full story. Not even close. It started when we deployed Abyss Protocol, a classified submersible program targeting the very base of the Challenger deep in the Mariana Trench. The kind of mission that doesn't get televised. No public live stream. Just raw data fed directly to black site servers and a heavily redacted summary, if you're lucky. Our vessel, Nereus 9, was equipped with a next-gen AI-driven ROV, remotely operated vehicle, and experimental sonar mapping tech capable of hearing infrasound frequencies, stuff beneath the range of human hearing. We were there because, for the first time in recorded history, something had started broadcasting from the trench. Something deep. And the signal, it wasn't random. It pulsed with unsettling regularity. Like breathing. Like a heartbeat. We launched from the research vessel Ellison Blue, about 200 miles off the coast of Guam. I was the data analyst on board, though most of what I did was monitor signal patterns and make sure the AI didn't do anything weird mid-dive. The team was small: Dr. Hayashi, marine biologist, Commander Briggs, ex-Navy, and Kara, our engineer who could fix a hydraulic leak with chewing gum if she had to. The first 24 hours were standard. The submersible descended in pitch darkness, broadcasting clean visuals, occasional amphipods, thermal vents, that eerie, alien landscape you only find 7 miles below the ocean. You learn to tune out the constant creaking of pressure-tight hulls and the distant groan of geological shifts. But around hour 31, things changed. The ROV started to pick up low-frequency vibrations. The kind that didn't match anything natural: whale calls, tectonic plates, you name it. These were structured. Rhythmic. As if something enormous was moving down there, and not randomly. I remember Hayashi saying, "That's not geological. That's behavioral." We all got quiet. You don't say behavioral when you're talking about miles beneath the sea. There shouldn't be behavior. Not at that depth. Not like this. Then came the lights. The footage cut to a section of trench wall where the sonar showed a smooth, vertical surface, completely out of place among the rough rock formations. It was as if a piece of obsidian had been installed there. Artificial, symmetrical, clean edges. It looked wrong. I remember Kara whispering, "That's not rock." She was right. The wall wasn't just reflecting sonar, it was echoing it. Returning signals that weren't ours. The ROV's instruments started twitching, recalibrating themselves, as if they were being spoken to in a language built on frequency. Then the camera feed cut to black. We tried to reboot the visual system, but the ROV's AI, the thing built to operate autonomously at these depths, started locking us out. Just flashing one message across the HUD. "Contact established. Awaiting response." I'll never forget the way that hit the room. A kind of silence that doesn't come from lack of sound, but from everyone realizing, simultaneously, that we had made a mistake. A very old one. We spent the next 3 hours trying to re-establish control of the ROV, but it was like wrestling with a ghost in a machine. The AI wasn't malfunctioning, it was deliberately rerouting commands, ignoring overrides, and continuing the descent along a new path. One we didn't program. One that curved deeper into a fissure we didn't know existed. Dr. Hayashi was glued to the screen, barely blinking, murmuring, "It's mapping something. It's not wandering. It knows where it's going." Meanwhile, the sonar feed kept streaming, dozens of overlapping low-frequency signals now, like listening to an orchestra warming up in hell. None of it made sense. The echoes weren't bouncing, they were responding. Tonal shifts. Patterns. Harmonics. As if we had stumbled into a conversation already in progress. At 36 hours, the ROV's depth log ticked past 10,943 meters, deeper than the official bottom of the Challenger Deep. Which should have been impossible. We started seeing structures on the feed. I know how that sounds, and I wish I could call it pareidolia, your brain seeing shapes where none exist. But these weren't tricks of light or silt. These were unmistakably geometric. Archways, columns, and carved spirals along the trench walls, all encrusted in marine growth but too precise to be natural. And that smooth wall we saw earlier? It wasn't alone. The fissure led to a vast chamber, easily the size of a stadium, entirely enclosed in black stone that shimmered like obsidian and absorbed light like a void. Our lights barely penetrated it. It just drank the brightness, leaving outlines more sensed than seen. Then the sonar feed screamed. A spike of infrasound so intense it blew out 2 of our spectrum analyzers. Kara slammed the mute control, but it was too late. Hayashi was on the floor, clutching her head, nose bleeding, pupils wide. She just kept whispering, "It's awake! It's awake! It's awake!" Commander Briggs took over immediately. He wanted to cut the cable and abort. Said the ROV had gone rogue, that this was beyond the mission's scope. But when he reached the comm panel to disable it, the ship lights flickered. Then died. Everything went black. Total power loss. Emergency systems kicked in maybe 30 seconds later, but the main control array was fried. Even Kara looked pale when she pulled open the casing. She just whispered, "That doesn't happen. That can't happen. It's like something reversed the current." And then the final transmission came in. Not from the ROV. From something else. A tight, 5-second audio clip. Low, guttural, and pulsing with layered harmonics. Again, not random. Not static. The waveform was too clean. Too patterned. I ran it through every program we had, trying to isolate the structure. It took me 2 hours to translate the signal into visual spectrograph data. What came out wasn't just noise. It was a symbol. Not like a glyph or a language, more like a schematic. A design that looked like a cross-section of some biological structure, only not human. Not even vertebrate. And at the very center of the diagram, burned into the readout like it was branded there, was a shape I still see in my sleep. A ring of concentric circles, interlocked and spiraling inward like a nautilus shell. Or an eye. Watching. We should have pulled the plug right then. I mean, really, what else do you do when the trench starts talking back? But Briggs, he didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in data, in threats he could shoot, and in orders. Problem was, we didn't have orders anymore. The satellite uplink was down. No way to contact base. No way to transmit the symbol we'd received. And yet none of us could stop looking at it. That symbol, it did something to your brain. Every time I blinked, I saw it behind my eyelids, pulsing like a migraine. Hayashi kept sketching it over and over in her notebook until the page tore through. She said it was a biological memory structure. Memory of what? I asked. Her answer chilled me. Not what. Where. It remembers a place. We managed to restore partial power to the command station, enough to regain a dim feed from the ROV. And what we saw. God. It had entered the chamber. The place. The floor was covered in a fine, ash-like silt, disturbed only where something massive had moved recently, dragging itself or slithering. The walls rose upward like a cathedral made for giants, patterned with that same spiral motif, carved into the stone, repeating, recursive, fractal. And at the center of it all stood a structure. Best word I have for it. Not a statue. Not a monument. It was about 20 meters tall, shaped like a spire twisted into itself, with rib-like extensions that radiated outward in slow, rhythmic movement. Yes, movement. It wasn't made of stone. It was alive. The ROV's proximity sensors showed minor temperature fluctuations, pressure changes that didn't match ocean currents. The sonar pulsed again, faint but present, and this time, it answered our signal. The submersible pinged. The spire responded. Ping. Response. Like echolocation between predator and prey. Kara leaned in, pale, whispering. It's talking to the ROV. Not to us. It thinks it's one of them. That's when things started bleeding. No, not us, the ship. We heard it first, this awful, wet hissing coming from behind the bulkhead. I thought it was a busted coolant line. But when Kara opened the access panel, red liquid sprayed out under pressure. Thick. Dark. Metallic. Not oil. Not hydraulic fluid. Blood. I stood frozen. The air turned coppery, cloying. And that's when Kara, rational, unflinching Kara, just whispered, "This isn't our machine anymore." She wasn't wrong. On the monitors, the ROV had extended its manipulator arm toward the spire. But it wasn't an arm anymore. It had unfolded, split open like an insect leg, exposing hundreds of fine, hair-like tendrils, organic and twitching. No one built that. Not us. Not any human hands. The room fell silent again. Except for Hayashi. She laughed. Soft at first, then harder. Her nose still bleeding, her eyes wide and unfocused. "It's not a discovery," she said. "It's an invitation. It's been waiting for something to remember it." The ROV went dark. No warning. 1 second we were watching it curl its grotesque new limb around the base of that spire, almost reverently, and then the feed cut. No static. No error code. Just gone. Like it was never there. We tried everything. Reboot, hard reset, signal boost. Nothing. But then, without the ROV active, without anything transmitting from our end, the sonar kept pinging. Not in our system, not from the Ellison Blue. It was coming from below. The signal had learned the pattern. Mimicked it. Perfectly. Briggs tried to keep control. Started barking orders, told us we were initiating surface procedures. We all wanted to believe we could still leave. I even remember him gripping the comms mic and yelling, "Prep the emergency ascent ballast! We're done here!" Except we weren't. That was when we saw lights. Real ones. Not screen feedback or sonar anomalies. Out on the open ocean, past the portholes. Something was rising from the trench. At first it looked like bioluminescent plankton, tiny flickers in the distance. But they moved with intent. A line. Then a pattern. They came closer, faster than any current. The water around the ship glowed, until it was like floating inside an aurora borealis, if the aurora was made of eyes. Briggs ran topside. I followed. We staggered out onto the observation deck just in time to see the ocean surface move. That's the only way I can describe it. The water didn't ripple. It bent, like something massive was just below it, pressing upward, reshaping it from underneath. Smooth and circular. Miles wide. Perfect. Then it breached. Or something did. Not all the way. Just enough to shatter everything I thought I knew about the sea. A shade broke the surface for a moment, a massive spiral structure of dark, wet chitin and glistening ridges. No eyes. No face. Just a rotating mass of layered plates that clicked and hummed like 1,000 locust wings beating in rhythm. Kara screamed. Briggs dropped the flare gun. We didn't run. We froze. Every instinct screaming that to move would mean being seen. But it already had. Down below, alarms went off. Internal. Ship systems that didn't rely on ocean contact. One after another, things began to fail. Oxygen recycling, navigation, even timekeeping. Clocks drifted. Watches stopped. One read 3:03, another said 19:14. We checked twice. All sync yesterday. Hayashi sat calmly in the control room, her face blank. She had stopped bleeding. But now her skin looked different. Waxen. Thin. Translucent in patches. I could see tiny vessels pulsing in her neck. She didn't speak in words anymore, just rhythmic hums. Echoes of that sonar pattern. I think she was responding to it. I don't think it was a choice. We barricaded her in the med bay. Kara was crying by then, wiping her hands with alcohol wipes that were already soaked in blood from touching the control console. Everything had this film on it, slimy and warm, like the ship was starting to grow something. Something new. That night, we think it was night, Briggs finally snapped. He dragged one of the oxygen tanks onto the deck, rigged it with a flare, and screamed. "If it wants the ship, it can have it! We burn it! We burn all of it!" Kara tried to stop him. I didn't. He lit it. And that was when we learned the ocean down here doesn't burn. It swallowed the flame. Not doused, devoured. Like it absorbed the energy. The heat. The intent. And then, it gave something back. From the deep, a new sound rose, something that bypassed our ears and went straight into our bones. A call. A pulse. The signal had changed. It wasn't echoing anymore. It was summoning. We found the extra room the next day. Yeah. I know how that sounds. The Ellison Blue is a research vessel. Small. Modular. Every inch accounted for. You don't just miss a room on a ship you've been living on for weeks. But there it was, past the galley, where a storage locker should have been. A bulkhead door. Steel. Sealed. None of us remembered it being there. Kara said, "That's not possible." Her voice had gone hoarse from screaming the night before, her hands still shaking. She touched the door and recoiled like it was hot. "It's warm," she whispered. "It's pulsing." Briggs didn't wait. He pulled his sidearm. Yeah, we had sidearms. Oceanic research gets unpredictable, and wrenched the lever down. The seal hissed open. Behind it? A corridor. Dimly lit. Metallic, but not like the rest of the ship. The walls curved slightly inward, almost organic. It felt wrong immediately. Like we had crossed into somewhere else entirely, somewhere we weren't supposed to be. And it stank. Not rot. Not chemical. Something deeper. A heavy, moist, iron-rich stench that clung to your throat and made you want to gag. Like breathing through rusted lungs. I told them we needed to stop. That we should close it, weld it shut, forget we ever saw it. But Briggs, he was past listening. He needed answers. Needed to believe we could still control whatever was happening. So we followed him in. There were symbols on the walls. The same spiral forms, but more detailed now, etched deep, with fractal veins that seemed to shift under our headlamps. Like they weren't engraved but grown. Hayashi's notebook, yes, we brought it, began to warm in my backpack. No reason for it to do that. But when I took it out, the symbols she had drawn over and over had changed. The lines had multiplied. As if it were evolving in sync with whatever was in this place. That's when we reached the chamber. It wasn't big, maybe 20 feet across, circular, like a silo turned horizontal. The walls were lined with what looked like growths, pods, maybe. Bioluminescent, faintly pulsing. And in the center, hovering off the floor, suspended in a mesh of that same fibrous, twitching material we'd seen on the ROV arm, was another suit. A deep-sea pressure suit. But not one of ours. Not modern. This thing looked ancient. Riveted brass plates, thick hoses, and a spherical helmet covered in sediment and barnacles. It looked like it had been resting at the bottom of the ocean for a century. But it was intact. Floating. Waiting. Briggs stepped closer. "This isn't possible," he muttered, raising his gun slowly. The suit turned toward him. Let me repeat that. The suit turned. No sound. No warning. No propulsion. Just a slow, deliberate rotation, until the helmet was facing him. The lights flickered. Every pod on the wall pulsed in unison. Briggs fired. 2 rounds. The bullets never hit. They just stopped in midair, suspended like insects trapped in amber. Then they fell, flattened. That's when the walls started to close. The corridor behind us, gone. Sealed with smooth, glistening tissue. The room began to breathe. A low, wet inhale that made every hair on my body stand up. The pods on the walls twitched. One cracked. Inside was a human eye. Still blinking. Kara screamed and ran for the wall, slamming it with her fists. I grabbed her, pulled her back just before another pod split open, this one holding teeth. Just teeth. No jaw. Just a spiraling mass of human molars embedded in something that looked like coral. Briggs turned, trying to aim again, his face pale, sweaty, his pupils huge. "Run," he said. "I'll hold it off." We didn't argue. We found a seam in the wall. Not a door, more like a wound. We shoved ourselves through it, clawing, slipping, feeling the tissue stretch and pulse around us. And just before I lost sight of Briggs, the suit opened. Not with a hatch. It peeled back. Like it was never a suit at all. Like it had always been skin. And something stepped out. We made it out of that place. Not unharmed, not unchanged, but breathing. The wound we'd pushed through spat us back into the engineering corridor near the aft of the Ellison Blue. No seams. No door. No sign of the impossible chamber we just crawled through, our hands and knees slick with something that smelled like copper and old seawater. Kara collapsed, sobbing. Her hands were raw, scraped and bleeding, and she kept muttering Briggs's name under her breath like a broken record. I tried to check her over, but that's when I noticed the worst part. The symbol from Hayashi's notebook. It was now burned into the skin of Kara's forearm. Not inked. Not bruised. Branded. It pulsed faintly with a cold blue glow, like bioluminescence under her skin. And it wasn't stationary. The spiral slowly turned, inch by inch, as if it was alive. I almost dropped her. We made it back to the control room. Emergency lighting flickered. The air felt thinner. Every surface had that wet film, that living sheen crawling slowly across the steel. And the sonar feed was back. Only it wasn't ours. The ROV was still gone. The sub-signal was still dark. But now the sonar was transmitting again, backward. Not emitting pings, but absorbing them. Like it was a black hole for sound. Kara lifted her head. "It's recording us." She was right. A pattern began to emerge on the waveform. 4 blips, a pause, then 3 more. Then again. And again. Until it clicked in my brain what it was doing. It was counting. Us. There were 4 of us before. Now there were 3. And then came the sound we hadn't heard since the trench. The low, organic hum that vibrated the bulkheads. Not through the speakers. Through the walls. A resonance, deep and primal. We bolted the control room door and pulled the emergency hatch shut. Kara curled up under the comms station, and I tried to find any trace of outside contact, satellite, emergency beacon, anything. But the screens weren't showing coordinates anymore. They were showing depth. Only it didn't make sense. We were supposed to be surfaced. But the readout said, depth, 2742 m. Descending. I looked at Kara. "The ship isn't rising." She nodded slowly. "It's being dragged back down." Hayashi showed up 6 hours later. Not walking. Standing, yes. But not moving like a person should. Her spine was too rigid. Her head too still. Her feet didn't make sound on the metal floor. She just appeared in the hallway beyond the reinforced glass, staring through the window. And she was smiling. Wide. Too wide. She lifted her hand and slowly pressed it to the glass. Blood spread outward from her palm, not dripping, just leaking through her skin in thick rivulets, spelling something I didn't want to understand. And then she opened her mouth. Didn't speak. Just emitted that sound, the signal. Kara started convulsing immediately. Her branded arm flared white-blue. I grabbed her and pulled her back from the glass, shouting her name, but her eyes had rolled back, and her lips were moving in perfect sync with Hayashi's. A duet. Human and something else. I blacked out. Only for a moment. But when I came to, Hayashi was gone. Kara was breathing again. And the ship's depth had passed 5,000 meters. You ever hear steel scream? Not groan. Not creak. I mean scream, long drawn out and alive. Like something realizing, too late, that it was never strong enough. At 6,000 meters, the Ellison Blue began to buckle. The hull wasn't supposed to go that deep. The pressure down there can crush a nuclear submarine into scrap metal. We were dead. Except, we weren't. The ship should have imploded. But it didn't. Instead, it flexed. I was on the floor, holding Kara as she muttered nonsense syllables, still caught in whatever grip that symbol had on her. I felt the floor bow beneath us. Metal doesn't do that, not like this. The ship wasn't holding together through engineering anymore. It was being preserved. Or worse, incorporated. At 7,200 meters, the cameras came online by themselves. No power surge. No system reset. They just flicked on, all of them, at once. External, internal, even the ones inside sealed equipment bays. Every feed showed the same thing. Water. Still. Silent. Darker than oil. But it wasn't empty. Shapes began to appear. Not moving, stationary. Lurking just outside the light. Pale and massive. Faint outlines, like statues carved from salt and bone. Some looked humanoid, others, not even close. One floated just inches from the hull. No eyes. Just long, spiraled grooves running the length of its face, if that's what it was. Its body was covered in the same black chitin we'd seen on the suit. But this one was breathing, each exhale sending tiny bubbles streaming upward like whispered prayers. I could feel it watching me. Through the screen. Through everything. And then, we stopped descending. The depth counter froze at 10,978 meters. That's nearly 35,000 feet down. Below the mapped bottom. Below the reach of any pressure suits, any submersible, any sane human curiosity. There was a sound. Low. Rhythmic. I realized it was my own heartbeat. And then, something answered it. A second beat. Slower. Deeper. Echoing through the hull, matching my rhythm and then overtaking it. Like a mother pulling a child back into sync. Kara stood up. Her eyes were glowing faintly now. Not lit, but reflecting something I couldn't see. She looked at me, no fear, no pain. Just certainty. It's ready, she said. I didn't ask what. I couldn't. Because I already knew. The ship opened. No hatches. No alarms. Just splitting. Like a flower unfurling at the bottom of the world. Steel peeled back. Bulkheads twisted into spirals. Rooms bled into one another. The ocean didn't pour in, it entered, like it was part of us. The pressure should have killed us instantly, but instead it felt like nothing. Like we were no longer inside the ocean, but part of it. I floated. Not drowning. Not breathing either. Just suspended. My limbs uncooperative. My body no longer obeying the laws I'd lived by. I watched Kara drift away from me, arms outstretched, the brand on her arm now a fully bloomed spiral that pulsed in time with that heartbeat. And then the eye opened. Not hers. Its. The spiral wasn't just a symbol. It was an aperture. A biological mechanism. And it had awakened. A massive, singular eye embedded in the trench floor, wide as a stadium and ancient beyond comprehension. It looked straight through me, not at me, but through time, through memory, through everything I ever was or would be. And it remembered me. Not as an individual. As a species. You ever remember something that didn't happen? I'm not talking déjà vu. I mean real memories. Sensory detail. Emotion. But they don't belong to you. You know they can't. You feel it in your gut. And yet, they're yours all the same. That's what the eye did to me. No light. No screen. Just raw, unfiltered memory injected straight into the core of me, like data piped into a broken server. I didn't see images. I experienced them. It showed me what it had seen. What it had consumed. The first memory was drowning, but not mine. A creature, ancient and slow, sinking for days, weeks, drifting downward in total darkness. Something huge. Scaled. Dying. A leviathan from before we had names for such things. As it fell, it sang, not in words, but vibrations. Mournful, aching. And something heard it. Something beneath. Something hungry. The trench opened. I mean that literally. The seabed tore like a slit in flesh, and that song was answered, not with comfort, but with appetite. That great beast vanished into the dark, wrapped in tendrils, absorbed into something older. The hunger of the world itself. That was the first offering. The second memory felt more recent. Not years. Centuries. It was a ship, wooden, primitive. 1800s, maybe? Storm-ravaged. Doomed. I felt the men on board. Their fear. Their mutiny. One by one they turned on each other, hearing whispers from the water below. Not words, patterns. Symbols. Spirals. Some carved them into their own skin. One man, British, gaunt, half-mad, jumped overboard in the dead of night. And the trench received him. He didn't drown. He was welcomed. His final thought before he vanished into the black, it's not hell. It's home. The third was mine. Or almost mine. I saw myself, but not here. Not on this ship. I was in a lab. Underground. Monitors glowing. Dozens of sonar feeds running in parallel, like I was searching for something. My face was older. Lined. Obsessive. And on the center screen was the spiral. But it wasn't labeled. There were no names. Just a tag. Protosignal / origin, abyssal entity 03. I watched my older self say, "It's still calling." Then everything flooded. The I knew me. Not just me, but all of us. It wasn't just watching the ocean. It had been watching us watch it. And not idly, not curiously. Patiently. This wasn't a reaction to discovery. It was a response to recognition. We hadn't found the eye. It had let us find it. Because we were finally ready. Kara was drifting beside me. Her arms were spread, palms out, her spiral brand now glowing bright enough to cast light into the black. She looked at me, calm, tear-streaked, and whispered, "They used to be like us." I wanted to ask who. But then I knew. The shapes in the dark. The structures. The chambers. The suit. They weren't alien. They weren't visitors. They were former humans. Former civilizations. Species that evolved, explored, and reached, only to be consumed by what waits in the dark once you go deep enough. The eye doesn't kill. It recycles. Memory. Flesh. Thought. I looked down at my hands. My skin was turning pale. Porous. Veins darkening into thin lines that curled and spiraled beneath the surface. It had started. The process. The invitation. If I said I escaped, I'd be lying. You don't escape something like that. You survive it. And even that's not quite right. You exit. Like waking up from a coma with your memories scrambled, except the nightmare came after the dream. I don't remember the exact moment I lost Kara. 1 second she was there, adrift beside me, the glow of her spiral branding painting the dark like moonlight through fog, and the next she was gone. Not torn away. Not taken. Just absorbed. Like she had agreed to leave. Because that's the thing, once the eye knows you, really knows you, it doesn't force. It offers. And Kara? She said yes. I remember the Ellison Blue falling apart in slow motion, the hull peeling into ribbons of biosteel, its components separating like dissected limbs. I saw the ROV again, Nereus 9, drifting past like a dead thing, its manipulator arms twitching on their own, now more tentacle than tool. The eye pulsed once more. A farewell? A warning? A seed? That's when I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in a decompression chamber off the coast of Guam. Alone. Naked. No record of extraction. No medics. Just the emergency oxygen feed hissing softly in the dark and the soft beeping of machines monitoring my vitals. I had been missing for 16 days. That's what they told me. NOAA said the Ellison Blue had gone dark. Presumed lost. Deep sea implosion. Zero recovery. They wanted answers. I gave them nothing. Because I had none that they would believe. I went back to my apartment in Seattle. Tried to pretend I was whole. But I wasn't. And here's the part no one prepared me for. The changes didn't stop. They never stopped. Every night, I wake up at exactly 3:03 a.m. Same time. Without fail. And in the silence of my bedroom, I hear it. Not loud. Not in the air. In my bones. That rhythm. That pulse. That slow, spiraling heartbeat. The brand? Yeah. I have one now too. It started as a bruise. Small. Right below my ribs. Then it darkened. Twisted. Sharpened. It doesn't glow like Kara's did. Not yet. But sometimes, when I'm near water, it burns. And sometimes, it responds. To what I don't know. Or maybe I do. Maybe I just don't want to say it out loud. 2 months after my recovery, I got a visit. Not from NOAA. Not from anyone I could track. 2 men. Plain clothes. Civilian posture. But they moved like military. The kind that doesn't show up on payrolls or FOIA requests. They didn't ask how I survived. They didn't care. One of them slid a folder across my table, no name, no markings. Just a symbol drawn in black ink on the cover. A spiral. The same one. He tapped it once and said, "It's happening again." Inside the folder were photos. Sonar images. Deep-sea spectrograms. And one grainy satellite photo of a cargo vessel drifting 600 miles off the coast of Chile, upside down. No crew. No distress call. The steel hull melted along the bottom edge like it had been in a blast furnace. But there was no fire. Just this note in the margin, scribbled in pencil. Internal cavitation. Origin unknown. Ship structure resembles biological transformation. And another below it. Second signal detected. It's not isolated. It never was. The eye we found? It wasn't the eye. It was one of them. A node in a larger network. The trench isn't just a geological formation. It's a wound. A fracture in the crust where the old world seeps through. A place where things that should have never endured have waited. And now, after all this time, we've begun waking them. Not with noise. Not with light. With memory. Our exploration. Our sonar. Our technology. Our curiosity. They're not just tools. They're signals. They tell the deep. We're here. We remember you. We're ready. You want to know the worst part? I'm not scared anymore. That feeling's gone. What I feel now is clarity. Like I've accepted something I was always meant to. Like the spiral was already part of me long before I ever saw it. I think about Kara sometimes. I think about Hayashi. About Briggs. About how I didn't escape the trench. I was released. So I could carry something. So I could prepare the others. And now, when I sleep, I dream of spirals. Cities that breathe. Chambers made of thought and bone. A new structure rising beneath us, not from rock but from us. We're not the first. We won't be the last. But we may be the final version. The one that opens the way. The one that finally remembers.